Hello guys! Welcome to Thithia Girl. Today I'm going to be explaining to you guys the concept of slope, how to calculate it, and how to calculate the general equation of a linear function from 2 points. Now, if you're trying to understand derivatives, you should watch this video first before jumping into the derivatives videos, just because it's very important that you actually know the concept of slope and how to calculate it. And if you've never heard of derivatives before, just pretend like I didn't say anything. Let's jump into the video. So the slope of a line is basically how steep our line is. And we can classify the steepness or the slope of a line in two ways, depending on if it's steep or shallow. So it depends on the value of the slope. If it's high, we say it's steep. If it's low, we say it's shallow. Or depending on if it's positive or negative, which is the same as saying depending on if it's increasing or decreasing from left to right. The negative ones can also be steep and shallow depending on the absolute value of the slope. And we also have extreme cases where our line is so steep that is actually vertical. In this case, the slope is undefined. And then we have the other extreme case where our line is so shallow that it actually is a horizontal line. In this case, our slope would be 0. Now, we cannot just be content with being able to classify the slopes or being able to classify linear functions depending on how steep or shallow, or if they're positive or negative or increasing or decreasing. We shouldn't just be content with that. We want to calculate the actual value of the slope. We want to calculate the number. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So we already know that the slope indicates how steep our line is, but to be able to calculate the actual value, a number for our slope in a linear function, we have to go a little bit deeper in the concept of slope. It is the ratio of the rise to the run, which is the same as saying is the ratio of the vertical change to the horizontal change between 2 points. Now, the vertical change and the horizontal change have to be between the same points, but we can choose random points because the slope is a constant in the linear function. It doesn't matter what 2 points we choose to calculate the slope of our linear function, the final result, the final ratio is going to be the same. So what we're gonna do now is choose 2 random points to calculate the slope in this linear function. Let's say your point 1, P1, has coordinates 1, 2. And our P2 has coordinates roughly 3, 5. Now, I always advise to draw this little triangle that is going to help us visualize the vertical and horizontal change between the 2 points to be able to calculate the slope and visualize the slope. So, the vertical change, as I said, is known as rise. Also called as variation in the y-axis because the vertical change happens in the y-axis. And this is the horizontal change, also known as run. because it happens on the x-axis, it's also known as variation of x. The rise is the vertical change, the vertical variation from these 2 points, which means it is actually the difference between the y coordinates of the 2 points. 5 for our point number 2 and 2 for our point number 1. So it is actually y2 minus y1. And we can visually see it here as well. Y coordinate for P2 is 5 and for P1 is 2. And we see that this distance is the distance between the 2 points, the 2 coordinates. The same goes for the run. Is going to be x coordinate of point 2 minus x coordinate of point 1. Now let's give a value to this expression. The rise is going to be 5 minus 2 which is 3, and if we count the amount of units that we have in this distance is actually 3. And for the run, it is 3 minus 1, which is 2. And there is actually 2 units in this distance between the 2 points. Now, the slope also known as m. This m, it's what's going to be our slope. So, as I said, it's the ratio of the rise to the run. So in this case, it's going to be 3 over 2. And this expression just means that every time, and 3 over 2 just means that in this linear function, every time we increase the units in the y-axis by 2, the units in the y-axis increase by 3. To be able to calculate the general equation of a linear function from 2 points, first we're going to find the slope between those 2 points. That is what I just explained earlier. The 2 points can be given in 2 ways. They can either give you the coordinates of the 2 points, or they can also give you the value of the function for a specific value of x. This just means that the function when x equals minus 1 is 4. The same goes for this one. So, as I said, first let's calculate the slope between the 2 given points, and here we're just going to substitute. y2 is the y coordinate for point number 2, which is 3, minus y coordinate of point number 1, which is 4, divided by x coordinate of point 2, minus 3, minus x coordinate of point 1. Now, pay attention to this. X coordinate of point 2 is minus 3, minus the value of the x coordinate in point number 1. Point number 1 has a negative coordinate, so let's put parentheses here, minus 1. Now 3 minus 4 is minus 1, and minus 3 plus 1 is... It's always best to just put parentheses, and then minus and minus is plus, and minus divided by minus is positive. So our slope is 1 over 2. So it's a positive slope. This means that our line or our linear function is going to grow because the slope is positive. Now, just to be completely certain about this, I would just advise you guys to represent the line between the 2 points given, just to be sure before going to the next step. So let's do it really quickly. This is the 2 points that they're giving us, and if we draw the line, I'm like the worst at drawing lines. Well, not lines, straight lines. Yeah, we can see that our line is actually growing from left to right. So this seems correct. Now let's go to the second step. Now if we take a look at the general equation for our linear function, we've already calculated the slope. And it's important to say that we want to keep y and x as variables. We don't want to substitute that with a number, so we just want to keep it as y and x. But we got b, and b is our y-intercept. And that is the value of our function when x equals 0. So it is the value of our linear function where it crosses the y-axis. And we need to calculate that as well. So for that, we're going to use the point slope formula. Now, I don't like when you guys or anyone in general just memorizes formulas, just because your brain can trick you. I just rather you understand what you're doing than memorizing a lot of stuff. And this formula is just not another formula. It's kind of like a formula that comes from this one. So if we take a look at this and at this formula and we want to make them look alike, what we're going to do is keep the y's on one side of the equation and move the rest to the other side. If we keep the y's in one side of the equation and then we take the x's, that because they're in the denominator here, when I move them to the other side of the equation, they multiply the m, so it would look like something like this. As I said, we want to keep y and x as variables, so instead of using 2 points, because in this case we're using 2 points because we want to calculate a number for the slope. But if we want to keep y and x as variables, how about instead of this, y2 and x2, we just call it x and y. Look what happens. It's the same equation. So they're all actually related. We're just playing with variables and numbers to get what we want. Now that we understood where this comes from, let's just substitute the values. Let's just choose one of the points. Let's choose P1. So we got y minus y coordinate in P1, it's 4, equals the slope that we just calculated, 1/2, multiplied by x minus the x coordinate, that is -1. So let me just go here. Minus multiplied by minus is plus, and let's just, so we can already see the slope here, and then this is the value that is going to be our y-intercept, which is b, and because it's a fraction we need to do common denominator, so all divided by 2, and 4 is the same as 8 divided by 2, right? It's the same. So to do common denominator, we all know this. We just multiply 2 by 4, which is 8. So this gives us 9/2. that is the value of our y-intercept. So the final expression of our general equation is actually that. If this video made you understand the concept of slope and helped you understand how to calculate it and how to calculate the general equation of a linear function from 2 points, please give it a thumbs up, comment down below, either positive or negative comments, preferably positive, but I will so learn from the negatives, and also subscribe and share.